And we're live. Welcome back for another episode of Professor and Media. I'm Wolfinger.
And I'm Dalton Whitehead.
Yes, you are. Never change, Dalton Whitehead. And today we're very pleased to have Greg Capecchi on. Greg is the founder and host of the Multisport podcast and blog, which is a far more professional podcast than ours. He's the editor and does ads for certain BikeRoper.com. He also trains mixed martial arts, which makes him a natural for this podcast. So we can just talk about grappling, if nothing else. But I know Dalton was interested in the minimalism. And so,
yeah.
Do you want to start and tell us what the concept is behind your pod, and then?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I don't know. Should we call out our mutual friend who arranged this?
Sure. Thanks, Pedro.
Pedro,
yeah.
You're awesome. You suck. Stop tapping me out. What a dick. No, Pedro's great, and so yeah, thanks to him for setting this up. But I guess I can give you the elevator pitch or the little short thing on what I've done. So
the long one. What do you prefer?
Okay. Well, my whole sporting background is actually not in mixed martial arts or jiu-jitsu. That's been only the last handful of years. I started out as a kid doing endurance sports. I mean, I started doing all sports, but eventually honed in on running and swimming. And I think, honestly, I was just too scared to do wrestling, or it didn't come naturally to me. So I went to what was easiest for me, I guess, which is probably pretty normal, which was swimming. And that was great. Developed a lot of work ethic, and it was, actually we sort of had a bond with a lot of the wrestlers because we were the only two sports in the school that had morning practices. So we'd see each other going into the locker room to sort of, give them the nod, like, hey guys, I get it. This is a grind. We're both putting the time in. So we had that going. But yeah, big into swimming, got into some running. And then once I got into college, I decided to do triathlons because I'm like, well, I can swim, I can run. I've ridden a bike as a kid. I'm sure I can pick that up too. And so I started doing triathlons. And it's not really a young person's sport, so I've learned later. It's the average person doing it is probably a 40 to 50-year-old, guy, just white man. It's expensive, and you have to have all this equipment, and there's just a lot that goes into it. It's very much a sport of logistics and preparation. It's not so much fun, I guess. But seriously, in the moment, it's not like I'm doing a triathlon and I'm just smiling. Oh, this is just so much fun and a great time. It's like, no, it's painful. You're going as hard as you can. You're generally alone. You're trying to get away from other people, leave them behind, and it sort of attracts a certain personality type, which tends to be type A. Just not the most, I guess, fun-loving people. I'm not trying to talk shit here. Like, there's some great people I've met. I definitely learned a lot, had some good times, but it took me a long time to realize, like, hey, this might not be the best fit for me. But by that time, it was already who I was, and I was pursuing turning pro. I had graduated college, gotten a job in the bike industry working for a manufacturer of these expensive carbon racing wheels for bikes, which was, I guess, the dream at that point. Oh, this is I'm working for this company. I'm racing. They actually gave me sort of a flexible work schedule so I could do my training, and that was great. And I got my pro card for triathlon and did that. And I guess somewhere along the way, I'm skipping a lot, but somewhere along the way I realized that it wasn't for me, and I was chasing something that didn't feel right, both on a sporting level, like the whole thing where it's just not quite as fun as I'd like it to be. I can't really relate to a lot of the people I'm spending time with. It's a lot of time alone. When you're training for an Ironman, which I think I did 8 Ironmans, which is way too many. Don't do it. But you spend all weekend by yourself. I'd go for a 5 or 6 hour bike ride on a Saturday, and maybe a swim 2 if I have time, and you run 2 or 3 hours on Sunday, and you're exhausted the rest of the time. And so I wasn't going out. I was I was this really, looking back, kind of overly serious teen and 20, in my mid-20s. Like, I didn't party. I didn't do anything. I trained.
Do you want to funny, Greg?
Sure.
Your thought I had. You sort of describe how people bottom out with World of Warcraft. I'm serious.
Okay.
They start playing it, it's fun, it's into it, and somewhere they find it just becomes work. They're engaged in these 5-hour expeditions with their buddies, and it just becomes work, and it's very similar. Huh.
Well, yeah, and that's a good point. It's I have all these. Fight Club is one of my favorite movies, and there's so many. I'm sure you guys, pretty much every grappler or MMA person, like they have all these. Oh, I get it. They're so right, and the thing of the things you own end up owning you, and I was serving this thing more than it was serving me, and it was hard to wrestle with that because my whole life was built around it, and it got to where I was training because this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? This is who I am, and it took years to really fully unwind that, and ultimately what took me away from it was getting into grappling, and that was purely because of Joe Rogan, and I started listening to his show. I just stumbled upon it in a YouTube rabbit hole, and when it was like late 20s, probably around episode 300. I think he's now at like 1200. And he talked about it so much, and it seemed like such a good thing, and I wanted something to do. And I gave myself a deadline. I was 30 at the time, and I said, before you turn 31, you're going to walk your ass into a gym and at least talk to them. Yes. And I did. It was the day before my birthday. There was a place, I was living in Michigan at the time, and I signed up. They had do a free week and see how it is, and it just felt good. Lots of different people, different ages and socioeconomic status, and it was whereas triathlon, it's all rich old white guys pretty much. And I go in here and it's all these different people and everyone's friendly and nice, and I just dove in, and part of it was my marriage at the time was also falling apart, and I wanted a way to get out of the house and have friends and do something and sort of get away from that chaos in my life, and here I am. I guess I didn't touch on the minimalism a whole lot, but I don't want to keep talking too much.
That's all right. We're flexible.
Okay. Well, I guess so I touched on the minimalism thing, and I started to get into that kind of in my late 20s. Also, there's the actual guys called the Minimalists who have several books and a podcast and blog, and a lot of that was very attractive to me. But again, it was tough to wrestle with because all this consumerism was tied into me doing triathlon, because you need so much gear, and that's just I was working for companies that were selling this gear, and then I became a journalist, which I'm back into now, writing about all this stuff, and it just kind of seemed gross after a while, and that's part of what drew me into jiu-jitsu. Is there is no equipment. It doesn't matter whatsoever what your brand of gi is, or rash guard, or who gives a shit. It doesn't.
Yeah, though people.
A little, but compared to cycling, it's the most minimal thing. And that's what's good. We go in there, we talk about trying to just get better, learning techniques. It's much, it just seems more pure as a sport. And I'm sure I'm still new. I'm a blue belt, so I'm probably in that still wide-eyed, oh, this is it's still romantic. And I'm sure people get jaded at some point too with any sport. But it just seemed like a good fit. So I started applying more minimalism to my daily life, and just I felt better the more I got rid of stuff and the clutter, the physical, visual clutter, and just less stuff to take care of. And it always felt good. And I sort of had this realization that, why don't I apply this to my cycling and sporting life too? Because those areas tend to get a pass, where if you watch these organization shows, there's have you heard of Marie Kondo? She's that Japanese lady who has the Netflix show? Okay, well she's had books and stuff, but she became much more popular in the last year with this Netflix special where she has this show about organizing, and her whole shtick is only keep something in your life if it sparks joy. If you hold it in your hand and you say, this thing, it's kind of corny, but or the minimalist guys say, does it add value to you? And if it doesn't, get rid of it. So I was into all that stuff, but people and their hobbies tend to just ignore the minimalism thing. Like, oh, well, if I'm into snowboarding, I need 8 different snowboards for all the different kinds of powder, and for bikes, it's terrible. At some point, I'm sure I had at least half a dozen bikes and multiple sets of wheels and just a garage full of shit. And I thought there's got to be a better way to do this. And so I started downsizing and shopping much more for versatility and reliability. And it makes me actually want to ride my bike more, because I was associating riding bikes with work, because I had all this crap to take care of. And it just became a way out of hand. And so I started a blog and podcast about it, and it's that's where I'm going. So it's a niche within a niche, like minimalism and sports together. So I don't know if it's gonna ever make me any money, but it's fun, and I'm the only guy that I know of that's talking about it.
It's fascinating you started grappling because of Joe Rogan, because I did as well. And it's funny you talk about like being a blue belt and being wide-eyed. I've often compared, and I feel like that it's this way with a lot of things in life, but grappling is a lot like religion. It's like when you discover it, you want everybody to know about it.
Yeah.
And so it's all you talk about, all you think about, and you think everyone should be doing it because it's so awesome. Was one of the big factors that kept you coming back after your first initial classes was the camaraderie. Talking about cycling, it's such a solo sport, and yeah, I mean, even when you're riding in I see groups of cyclists together. I mean, they're not really talking. It's pretty quiet.
They're like straight face. I'm trying to hide the fact that my legs hurt, and they're all serious. And I mean, when I'm rolling, I'm the guy that's always laughing. Even if I'm getting caught, it's almost like laughing at myself at how stupid I was. Oh, geez. And I love it. It's so intoxicating and fun, and the camaraderie's real. Whereas, on a bike, I made some friends, and we had some, that's cool, but it is, for the most part, much more solitary. So, yeah, I think a lot of people that don't do grappling or sports like that, they don't understand the camaraderie side. It's hard to understand until you really get into it.
One is one of my standard lines that I tell new people at my gym is that I say grappling will ruin you for everything: sex, liquor, marijuana. None of them seem fun compared to grappling.
I still have fun with those.
I exaggerate, but hyperbole. The other is on this show, you're the 4th person we've had who's a grappler, and the others included a cop who talked about policing, a guy who's the 2nd in charge of a communist magazine, and a guy who is a psychologist who's written several books about masculinity and pornography.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's great. You meet all different kinds of people.
Well, that's part of what is great is you do meet so many people, and it's obviously, it costs money, and not everyone can afford to do it. But compared to cycling, where you're supposed to buy a $10,000 bike and a $1,000 wetsuit, and all this stuff, it is more attainable, and that's part of why I like it. It's people need to meet different people. It's like traveling, where you need to see different perspectives.
Yeah.
I think it's healthy. So
totally.
Yeah. And it's in terms of the excitement about jiu-jitsu and how it takes over your life. And it's funny. My girlfriend will tell me she never sees me more excited than if I'm talking about jiu-jitsu with a buddy. She's like, "You seem like such a little kid, and you're so excited, and this smile is can't be erased from your face, but it's fucking fun. I can't,
Yeah, it's
guilty.
awesome. I wish I wish more people were into it, and talking about the cost for some people, that's one beautiful thing about open mats. I love gyms that do open mats, because even if you can't afford to have a membership, I mean, if you're in a populated area, there's a good chance you could train for free 2-3 times a week. If you can travel to the gyms at the times they have them, you can go in and open mats. You can ask questions and drill techniques, and you can learn quite a bit. I love open mats. It's one of my favorite things about grappling. Just showing up, it's very relaxed, and all people are welcome. And let's just slap hands and get after it.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, and it's
too to be able to run your game on people who don't have the same training you have regularly.
Yeah. When people don't know what your skills are, it's a different thing to roll with good and bad grapplers. But the factor of them not knowing how good you are or what your favorite moves and whatnot is. I love it. I'm right there with you. I can't imagine me ever stopping grappling. It'll always be a part of my life, and it's a really cool club / cult to be a part of.
Yeah, I think cult is appropriate. But it's fun. We always post pictures after. I'm like the picture guy, and I make everyone line up, and I'm trying to keep that community going and just show the fun, positive side, because not everyone, their friends or family, know what it's about, and they might think, oh, you guys are just these aggressive fighter dudes, and it's unnecessary. And I try to show the brighter side, so to speak.
Don't downplay the homoeroticism of it.
Well, it's funny when people say that. I've known of some people in my life that they don't do it, or friends of friends, and they make gay jokes and stuff. It's like they're of course just too afraid to show up and do it themselves. So that's their, oh, you guys just hugging it out, and it's so gay, and it's like just show up, see what it's about. Those guys, whatever.
I'm straight, but I still enjoy the homoeroticism.
Well, it's me and my bros. Yeah.
Huh. You said, Dalton, you talked a while back about having some interest in minimalism.
Well, I think clutter in your mind and in your life can be very harmful. I wouldn't say an avid fisherman, but I really like fishing, and I'm not great at it. I'm not like super into the tech and techniques and all that. I have a cheap Big 5 fishing pole and the cheapest tackle box you can buy, pretty much. But something about sitting by a lake and just calm and peaceful, I think there's some benefit to that. So I think that's kind of like a representation or a form of minimalism, and I think it's appealing to me. I'm not big into hustle and bustle in cities and stuff like that. I kind of have like a country boy spirit inside of me. I like nature and simplicity, and so yeah, I think that is very appealing. I did want to ask, how does living a minimalist life, how does like working and job in this modern world, how does that play a factor into it?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean with that. Like
can you be if you're wanting to be a minimalist, would that affect your career path or job selection?
Not necessarily. I think for me, there's a chance it has maybe negatively affected me a little bit, because I'm relatively public in the endurance world, and I guess when I'm writing product reviews, and I'm honest because I feel I'm supposed to be honest, and I don't. I think maybe I've gotten a reputation for being not always wanting to play ball with the manufacturers of these products, and being a little bit too truthful, or Yeah. Does that make sense? Like they're like, oh well, he's the guy that isn't going to give us the unilaterally positive review, so we're going to go to someone else.
Yeah.
But in terms of just regular jobs and such, I don't think it necessarily matters. I mean, if anything else, it could potentially open up more job possibilities, because if you're not chasing all of the material, you don't necessarily need to make as much money. It gives you a little bit more flexibility and a little bit less pressure. That said, I mean, I still have financial pressures in my life, and being a cycling journalist is definitely not the best way to make a lot of money. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's all I got.
No, I like that last part of not, if you don't need a lot of stuff or not wanting a lot of stuff, you know, it definitely would lessen your financial burden, or you're a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, I mean, I was going down that path more in my 20s when I was buying all this stuff, and I remember I had bought a car which I could reasonably afford. It was a new car, but it was about $20,000, so you know, still a lot of money, but it wasn't a $60,000 BMW, and I bought it, and that was great. But then I got unexpectedly laid off from a job. They were downsizing my department and reshuffling, and they were like, "Hey, you can have this other job at this other facility we have across the country," but it just wasn't the right job for the right money, and it just didn't make sense. So I was effectively laid off with a tiny severance, and all of a sudden it was like, oh geez, I can't really afford this car anymore. Holy shit, what did I do? And so the way that changed my perspective is, when I'm buying stuff, I try to only buy things that I basically don't care about, or if I was to lose it tomorrow, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Because shit happens. I don't want to buy the $300 sunglasses because I'm going to fucking lose them, or I'm going to drop them, or whatever. So I buy the $25 sunglasses, and if they get run over by a car, it's like, it sucks. It's $25, but it's fine. I'll move on.
I buy sunglasses at the dollar store.
Hey, you're ahead of me. So it just took a while to absorb those things, and there's also an element of just the physical clutter. I mean, I forget where I read it, but it was talking about how one of the reasons people like vacation is you go to a hotel room and it's clean for the most part. There's not a bunch. You don't have all your laundry and papers on the kitchen table and all this shit work staring you in the face. All these things, your to-do list, and it's a much more minimal like place to be, and we like that. And so if you look around, you know, my house now, I'm definitely not perfect. I'm not the best minimalist out there, but I just know the more I try to streamline, get crap out of the way, it always feels good when I say I have something on my to-do list and I don't do it and cross it off, but I just decide to never do it. It's like, oh, this just isn't even relevant. It's just going to go away. And that's kind of how I feel with getting rid of an item, where here's this thing that, you know, I would have had to have maintained or changed the batteries eventually, or it's just like there's always a little bit of background noise with having each little possession. And when you just get rid of it, give it away, sell it, it sort of is like removing a thing from your to-do list forever without ever having to do it.
Does that resonate with you, Dalton?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you live day to day, Nick, but I feel like you live a pretty, I don't know if I'd call you a minimalist, but I feel like you live pretty clutter free. You know, I've been to your house. You seem like a very simple, straightforward type of home. I don't know.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
I mean, it certainly is more complex than it has to be, but there's something sort of very fundamental there that doesn't resonate with me. I don't like being in nature. I like being in cities. I feel more relaxed when there's a lot going on. I like Vegas. I like all the ringing. I like shit constantly going on all around me. I get anxious when I'm in nature. I don't do it.
Okay, that's definitely the opposite.
It's not yeah.
How well do you sleep? I'm just curious.
It varies.
Okay. I mean, how many rough hours per night?
Oh, on a good night, 7.
Okay.
But
'Cause that's one thing I've met some folks with the same outlook where they like the action and the noise, and I've noticed that a lot of those types don't tend to be great sleepers, and I wonder if there's something going on there.
just in the interest of sleep hygiene, cut out electronics hours before I go to bed.
Yeah.
Just read.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's some other shit behind my sleep. But yeah, it doesn't. I know it's weird. Most people really say I can't like to get away from it all and be in nature, and
Yeah.
I'm not.
And I think part of the reason minimalism is good for me is because I tend to be the type that I feel like I have to take care of my stuff. Some people are fine just leaving crap in a corner and just letting it pile up, or it just doesn't even register. Like they never wash their car, or they're just that's a certain, I don't know if it's a personality type, but that's just how they operate. Where I'm the type that if I have something, I feel like I'm supposed to understand what it is, how it works, where it goes, and so given that I don't know if it's a need for control or just need to understand, I need to limit the total number of things that I have to deal with.
That's just personality type.
Yeah.
I have several friends whom are my long-term, 10-plus year people I play online video games with, and they're all dentists. Literally, they drill teeth, and it's a personality type. You have to have clean houses at all times.
Yeah.
And I'm moderately organized, but none of that connects to me that closely.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also kind of, I guess, really protective of my time because part of what got me into sports was just my having good health, and I got into the whole paleo diet thing before it was popular. It was when I think I read the Paleo Diet, the original book by Lauren Cordain, when I was like 20 or 19, and that's always been a big part of my life. And so to me, it's okay. Sleep is important. Exercise is important. All these things are important, but they all take time. Plus your job and relationships. And so, to me, the streamlining and downsizing is a way to manage time more effectively and have less to do. And it's not perfect. Shit still breaks. Problems still happen. Whatever. But that's part of the view is, on average, I want to free up more minutes per day so I can get enough sleep or do whatever I want to do. Read books. I never read as much as I want to.
Yeah, that I understand. Although, yeah, I hear you.
Do you guys want to touch on? I mentioned in our little pre-chat about the Polaris event. If we really want to shift into grappling, I don't know if you want to do that.
Sure.
Well, I didn't watch all of it. I just watched highlights. Yeah. But it seems like the match that I really watched is the one that you didn't, which is the Uriah Faber, Nicky Ryan.
Did you see that?
No, I saw a short little clip of Uriah Faber kind of smacking around Nicky.
Slapping the shit out of Nicky, yeah. Well, it became this big controversy where people were saying, well, let me say, here's what happened. So, Uriah Faber, he's 40 years old, and he's going against Nicky Ryan, who's the younger brother of Gordon Ryan, who's basically the greatest grappler on the planet right now. Arguably, whatever. Yeah. But Uriah Faber, he's more experienced, he's bigger, stronger. He's going against this guy who's not even a man as far as the government is concerned. He's 17. And they started going, and it's back and forth, and Nicky's more of a leg lock guy, so he's sitting down, butterfly guard, trying to get Uriah to come forward, and it's back and forth, and whatever. No one's really getting a lot done, and as it progresses, it becomes clear that Uriah is getting more and more frustrated. And even the commentators were saying, "Oh, he's having trouble here," and he was pushing Nicky Ryan away. So Nicky's sitting on his butt, butterfly guard. Uriah's on his knees, and he just kept pushing, and he was like, a couple of them looked like palm strikes. I mean, he was really aggressively, spastically pushing pushing him back, and so people were basically saying Uriah looks like a bully and blah blah blah. But then there was this other side that was saying it's combat sports. He needs, we don't. BJJ is becoming pussified, and he needs to be able to handle this. He agreed to the match, and we had this chat going on with we have an Instagram message chat with the big group from my gym, and I was surprised at all these guys who were defending Uriah. And oh, you're saying you shouldn't be physical? I'm like, I mean, he fucking lost. You're defending the guy whose magical physical tactics didn't do anything. He got one entry on an arm triangle where he it wasn't from a push. He sort of leaped over the guard, and he got an entry on the triangle, but then Nicky popped his head up pretty quick. But then later, Nicky got a really good entry onto a heel hook, I believe it was, and they sort of rolled out, got pulled out of bounds, so they pulled him back in, and during the restart, Uriah was able to pull his leg out. But long story short, Nicky gets the unanimous decision, and it just looked like Uriah lost composure, and it looked double bad because of the age and size difference. It looked like he was trying to beat up on a kid. He was running away. They're like, well, he didn't want to get leg locked. Well, no shit. But at some point, if your only defense from this thing is to not play jiu-jitsu, right. My strategy in this jiu-jitsu match is to disengage and not play jiu-jitsu. It just was a bad look, in my opinion.
I mean, Uriah Faber is a smart guy who's been around combat sports for decades, so he probably knew that it would not be easy for him to get past Nicky Ryan's guard and not get elevated, leg locked.
Yeah, I just thought it was a bad look, and if you really, the other thing is, from a strategy standpoint, if you're trying one thing over and over and over and it's not working, you should probably try something else. If I'm trying to pass to the left and I try it 8 times and it doesn't work, I'm probably going to try to pass to the right or fall back for a leg lock or something. But his strategy of this slapping and pushing, he just did it over and over and over and over. And it got to the point dude, you're just being a dick. This isn't...
Did he do anything different?
No. He stayed perfectly composed. That's what it was. He looked like the adult there because he was calm, cool, and collected, and he was just doing his thing. And you could say that, okay, well, Nicky should have done something aside from butt scoot and try to get leg locks. Okay, fine. But Uriah just looked like he wasn't even using his physicality, whatever, as an offensive strategy. He was just doing it to disengage. It was like Brendan Schaub when he did Metamoris with side run away. It's like, okay, man, I guess if that's what you want to do. So
you want to take this or should I?
In wrestling, I didn't wrestle in high school, but I really love wrestling. At my gym, it's definitely a cornerstone of our training, and there's a line, and it's hard to define when it comes to collar ties and touching the face, and it's kind of like one of those things, I can't define it, but I'll let you know if it's too far when I see it.
Yeah, well, it's like when you're clubbing the head down, our rule is don't extend your hand too much because they're going to hear the slap when you hit the back of their head, and then they're going to call you. But if it's this short little club, it's okay.
And also, if there's, if I collar tie a guy really hard, but that collar tie leads into a snap down or an actual technique, it goes a long way. But when the clip I saw was 5 seconds long, but the clip I saw was just Uriah on his knees, just basically kind of hitting the face of Nicky. And it's okay, if you're going to do that, you got to do something after. You can't just do that and then do nothing.
Correct.
So if he did what he did in the clip I saw, I didn't see the match, but maybe there's more egregious offenses. But, if he kind of bopped him on the face or the head pretty hard, but then he passed his guard, then I feel like it's a little bit more excusable. But if you're just going to do it just to do it, or to do it just to try and frustrate your opponent,
well, I think that's what he was doing. I think he just lost his composure. You're right. But if it was planned, maybe he was trying to make Nicky lose his composure. But you're right. When it's not used effectively, it's bad. And gosh, what was I going to say with that? I had somewhere to go. I lost it. Never mind. Sorry.
So, I split my time between Utah and California. In our gym, I know Dalton from where we train in Utah. And our coach there once said about why we wrestle, said, because if you just pull guard, it doesn't look cool. We want to do a cool sport. Like the EBI, like Denny Copos and Nate Orchard with a double guard pull. It looks dorky.
Yep.
And so that's why we want, why we want to wrestle. And you can make the argument about Mickey Ryan that all he wanted to do was sit.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of wrestling, that's one thing, Uriah is a good wrestler, and I was expecting some sort of blast double, some kind of takedown, and he was just on the feet, just pushing out with his hands over and over, and it just looked bad. But, I remember what I was going to say, Dalton, based on what you said. To me, the real debate here is, were they strikes or not? Was what Uriah did within the rules? I think that's the real, actual productive thing that we could say. And I'm honestly, I'm surprised the ref didn't at least give him a warning or something, because there was a couple times when Nicky's head kind of snapped back. I'm like, that looked like a palm strike to me. And this isn't combat jiu-jitsu. I think if it was, if you want to do that, if you want to play slappy face, sign up for a combat jiu-jitsu match, in which I think Uriah would have done much better, because he's an MMA fighter.
Yeah, if it was combat jiu-jitsu, he probably would have destroyed him.
Would have TKO'd him, and then said, "You knocked out a kid, you asshole." Yeah.
I think
combat jiu-jitsu is a peculiar new rule set conceived by Eddie Bravo, in which open-handed strikes are allowed on the ground, but otherwise grapple.
I want to compete in one. I was actually talking to the guy who owns the Factum gym here in Utah. He has an in-house tournament every couple months, and I asked him about that. I was like, you guys ever think about doing a combat jiu-jitsu tournament? He's like, I actually looked into it and talked to the commissions and stuff like that, but basically Utah with the rules, you'd have to do like all the...
Yeah.
You'd have to have gloves, and you'd have to do all like the blood work, physicals, referee, all that stuff as a MMA fight. So it depends on the state. But I would love to do a combat jiu-jitsu match.
Yeah.
I know every time that I've watched combat jiu-jitsu, it's regulated like MMA.
Yeah. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say EBI is now only combat jiu-jitsu. Is that right?
Really? I didn't think only. Huh. I'll Google that.
I thought yeah, check it, because I thought I had heard that, and the naysayers were suggesting that the reason Eddie Bravo wanted to start doing CJJ is because they couldn't beat Danaher's guys from the East Coast. Like, we're just going to change the rules here because we're getting leg locked and messed up, and I don't know if that's
I don't think those rules would favor in his in that way anyway. I don't think they would favor him for that. I think
it's a cool format. It's different. It gets more MMA guys into grappling, and it gets more grappling guys into MMA, and it adds an element of realism for street fights, and it's a whole different ballgame. I remember the first time I did MMA sparring with we had big gloves on, but just getting taken down, mounted, and just it was definitely not full force punching at all, but it was like, oh god, this is a whole different world. I mean, I'm going to have to basically decide to eat a couple strikes just to get my elbows in so I can elbow escape or bump sweep or something, and it changes your whole priorities.
So much eye-opening. Escape from mountain stuff.
It was probably the most anxiety I've ever felt. It's like, oh god, I'm going to die. But
do you do primarily no-gi or gi or?
Mostly no-gi. So when I started jiu-jitsu when I was up in Michigan, I did about 6 months of gi training up there, and then moved down to Florida and have been doing no-gi ever since. Our gym is much more MMA focused, so there are I go to Gracie Tampa North, which is the headquarter location, but there's a bunch of different locations in St. Pete and Bradenton and Downtown Tampa, there's a whole bunch, and some of the other schools do more gi training, but the North location is pretty much all no gi. And then I also do. We have sort of a catch-all MMA striking class that I do once or twice a week, and that's it's actually the bang system is what I do most. We've got our coach Bang. Bang Bang Ludwig. So it's him and Boss Rutan. It's the guy that my coach, Joseph Brooks, Muay Thai Joe, he's amazing. And he learned under the Bang system, and he's been striking and doing, I think he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, but just he's so well-rounded, and it's such a intricate but effective and fun system. So I do that, and then we've got wrestling classes a couple times a week. I usually make it for one of those. And so I'm trying to do a little bit of everything, which I don't know if that's smart or not, but they're all fun, and
what's your
gotta know
sport?
I don't really have one, and that's kind of why I like it so much, because I was so goal-focused with triathlon and cycling, and I've got to go pro, I've got to win this race or do that, and it was always chasing something and not necessarily enjoying the process, and I got tired of that, and so I entered it with no goals whatsoever. I haven't competed yet. I probably will eventually. I don't want to do MMA because I don't want to get head trauma, because I had a life-threatening bike accident in which I cracked my skull and had a bad concussion and broke 24 bones and collapsed both lungs, and
holy shit,
it was bad.
For?
I was in the ICU for I think a week, and then I got moved. Yeah, I got moved to just like it's I'm actually coming up. It's been 9 years, and almost been 9 years. But then I got moved to like a regular hospital room for a few more days, and yeah, and that's another thing I should have mentioned that sort of stopped my love affair with cycling. Was I'm like, oh, I can die from this, and I almost did. And especially in Florida now, I mean, it's not a cycling friendly state. It's all 2-lane roads and no shoulder, and drivers hate us. And I'm like, this isn't worth dying for. It's just not. So yeah.
Were you hit by a car?
Yeah, it was a truck, and basically stopped abruptly on a downhill, blocking the whole bike lane, and there was more cars whizzing by, and I couldn't get around him, and I clipped the back left corner of basically a dump truck, and yeah, basically went from about 30 miles an hour to 0 miles an hour instantly. And he was, he was stopping next to a no parking sign, and it was basically gross negligence. He shouldn't. Why would you go into the bike lane? He's on his phone and decide to just stop fast. And maybe there's people, like he had just passed me and remembered passing me, and I couldn't stop or get around him without getting hit by another car. So it was like oh shit, boom, and it was just fast.
Oh shit! Did you get? I hope you got somebody out of him.
It became a lawsuit. The issue was it was a city-owned vehicle. It was like a utility truck. Yeah. And I learned in the process that there's all these old laws that basically stemmed from way back in the day when you couldn't sue the king. And what it means now is there's limits on how much you can sue the government for, because this was a government vehicle. So no matter what happened, even if I had died, the most we could have collected was $150,000. That was the state or whatever limit that's the best case scenario. And my attorney was like, if this would have been a Comcast truck or just some whatever, he's like, you would have been $1 million, whatever, easily. So what it came down to is there was a settlement, but I ended up effectively breaking even with all the medical costs and attorney's fees, and so I didn't lose money, but I didn't get any money, basically.
Sorry.
So
you deserve money after that.
Good times. So yeah, I mean, whatever. I don't know how we got onto that, but so
do you spar at all?
For like striking?
Yeah.
I've done some light sparring. I need to do more, but honestly, I'm still so early in my striking that I just need to get better at fundamentals before.
Yeah.
I'll spar with people that I really trust, and I know they're just not gonna. If we get an opening, they're not gonna KO me just because they can. But I definitely need to get better, because that's part of why I'm doing it, is just to know how to use my timing and get out of situations and move. And I've never been in a street fight. I don't want to be, but if it happens, I want to be at least prepared. To know how to move and do footwork and that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm not gonna. I don't plan to ever do an MMA fight, just because getting KO'd is. I feel like I got lucky. I got out with no long-term issues, at least so far. My neck healed. I don't have any spine issues. One of my ears is still ringing. That's a permanent fixture because the way my skull cracked, it somehow damaged the inside of my ear. And my ear doctor at the time was like, some future doctor is going to look inside your ear and he's like, did you crack your skull right? Because I guess when you're an infant, your skull actually has like joints. Where there's like growth, these like plates where it's developing, and I guess it sort of cracked right along there, and it sort of shifted. So when you look in my ear, you can see this like clear, like this spot where it got fucked.
Oh man!
And so my ear rings, but yeah, I don't do crazy sparring. I don't need to. I don't want to.
Are you gonna do grappling tournaments?
Probably will eventually, but like I said, I want it to be fun. I don't want this to be anything out of obligation. So the thing that will get me to do it is if it's a social thing. So if we have, hey, there's this big tournament, we have 20 people from the gym going, we're going to make a weekend, we're going to go out to dinner, like that. That's what would get me to do it. I don't want to go by myself to some high school 3 hours away to compete in a gym, and I don't feel like that's going to do anything for me to spend my weekend doing that just to get a medal, or I don't know. It's I do it because I want to hang out with my friends.
I've competed under those circumstances. It's not much fun.
Yeah. Well, I did that with triathlons, where I'd fly or drive to some place to stay in some shitty hotel and wake up early and do this race, and I don't know anyone, and I'm like, why am I doing this? Is it for the congratulations from some strangers that I don't know? I'm hoping some guy at the race is gonna be like, hey man, you really crushed it. That's cool. I'm like, all right, but what does that do? Yeah.
What are your goals in the sport, Dalton?
Just get as good as I possibly can. I mean, it sounds like a totally egotistical thing to say, but I like to be, when guys talk about my grappling, I feel like I got into it too late to try and be the best in the world. I don't really have the resources to train that much to try and be the best in the world, but I like to, 5-6 years from now, I'd like people to be like, that's one of the best dudes in the state. That's one of the best dudes around. Something like that. I want to compete as much as possible. I don't know. It's more like a personal thing than a ranking.
That's cool. That doesn't strike me as like overly egotistical. Yeah. I guess I should say, I don't want to interrupt, but I do the only goal that's kind of in my mind is I really want to get a purple belt. I'm not chasing it. I want to get better, but the reason I say that is when I first started, there was a couple purple belts that just beat the shit out of me, and they were amazing, and like I want to be able to do that. They were playing with me like I was a baby and just tossing me around, and I'm like, man, I want to be one of those guys who can basically, handle any guy that walks in the door that's not trained, and it just seemed cool to me. So
that's not like having a purple belt though. That's just about getting good.
Yeah, I think I just associated with the purple belt because of those couple guys that they were early on. Like, I mean, this one guy, I remember his name's Ali, and he just fucked me up so bad, and he was that crazy purple belt that he was good enough to teach classes, and I was like, I just want to be like him.
Yeah, the funny thing about the gym I train at and Nick trains when he's here in Utah is our gym doesn't have a belt system.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we just track the hours we've trained.
Even for gi, what do you do there?
There's only no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're both no-gi only guys.
Okay.
But yeah, it's kind of funny. I'll roll with people, and a lot of times they'll be like, "Oh, what belt do you?" And it's like nothing.
Clear.
Sometimes people are like a little thrown off by that, but
The translation.
I'd consider myself a good purple belt if I had just comparing myself to people who are belted who I've grappled with.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the major function of belts in the world seems to be if I submit a guy, I think, oh, I just submitted another black belt. I submitted a brown belt. Like, wow, that guy is a white belt and he just wrecked me.
Well, it is kind of relative too. I mean, I think with our gym, it's somewhat on a curve because if you're not athletically talented at all, but you've been grinding for 8 years and you've gotten so much better, like you're gonna belt up because you should. And then, but there's guys that come in that are super athletically talented. They played football, they wrestled, and they might be able to beat that other guy, but their experience level isn't a purple belt yet. They're still figuring things out, and so I think that's important though too. It's really where the phrase is always your jiu-jitsu journey, but it's kind of true. It's where are you on your timeline? I know it's corny, but it's kind of true.
See, that's a good ideal, but it's not like every gym is going to adhere to that.
Correct.
Yeah, and
yeah.
I was like Dalton, right? I first trained in 2005. I'm old, so I'm 53, but I've training a while. So when I arrived at my gym in California, I said, I'm not going to have to get belts here, right? And they said, no. And then like last year, because I didn't want belts, last year my coach tackled me from behind, and another person in the class reaped my legs, and they forcibly tied a blue belt around me. And I was not happy, and the whole thing sort of bummed me out.
Really?
Yeah.
Were they trying to be funny at all, or it was like a serious?
I mean, it was sort of serious, right? It's like, if we're gonna belt you,
Okay.
we're not gonna give.
I could see
this.
If it was kind of tongue in cheek or whatever, then it's who cares?
It was half tongue in cheek, because of course.
Okay.
It's ridiculous, right? Tackling someone from behind when they're drilling to tie a belt around them.
Yeah.
But on the other side, I didn't want that belt. That was,
But it's not like you have to wear it, though, right, Nick?
No. But now I think, fuck, why aren't they promoting me? Why am I still a blue belt? It's forced me to playing that game, where before I was happy being, happy like not just getting better and not having a belt. Yeah,
I could see that, where it's like if you're trying to opt out of the system, and they're like, no, you're going to be in this system, and now it's in your head.
Yeah, exactly. My buddy Sean, who's a cop we had on here talking about policing, he's trained almost 20 years, and he was a blue belt just because he didn't care, and he moved around gyms. I think he finally just got promoted. Now he cares about it because they did promote him. But it's like he crushes almost everyone he rolls with. Yeah,
yeah, and I don't really care that much. It's a nice little thing, but I just want to get good, and that's it.
Yeah, I want to get good. I think both of us, Dalton and I, both competed a lot, and at this point, I'll only compete in non-IBJJF tournaments like Naga.
Okay. Yep.
Where it's just by beginning, intermediate, expert. We're both expert now.
Yeah. Nice. Very good.
Yeah.
Where else can we take this? Or I don't want to keep you if you want to go get to grappling practice.
I already trained today. So good. Dalton, we going to train?
I gotta go to the grocery store after this, so no grappling tonight. I went pretty hard last night and the other night. So.
Okay.
Okay. I do have one question. This is really unrelated, but it's something I ask a lot of people, and I especially try to ask people that are older than me. I'm 34. Dalton, how old are you?
25.
Oh, you're a youngin', man. You sound older. You sound like you have this wisdom about you.
Thank you. I
sound
don't,
like what's this? There's a show, HBO show, Silicon Valley. You sound like the guy with the beard who's the stoner guy. Do you ever tell you that?
Oh, the one who owns the house?
I think so. He's just like really like soft, like he just speaks sort of low and slow, and you kind of sound like him.
I'll have to look him up.
Have you seen that show, Dalton?
No, do you know the name of the character?
I'm thinking, is it the guy who, is it Erlich Bachman, the one who owns the incubator?
Let me look real quick. Hang on.
But we can go off track.
Hang on. Silicon Valley show. Oh, well, I'll find it later. Whatever. But do you think the world is fundamentally changing since basically the 2008 recession, and since smartphones and social media have completely changed our daily lives, and it just seems like there's this sense that things are strange now and different now, and I'm trying to decide how much of it is just me growing up. For example, I've had more than one person over 50 or 60 say, like, basically, I'm not jealous of you millennials and you kids now, like, growing up in this climate that just seems to be economic chaos, social media chaos, the whole hyper PC culture. And am I crazy? Does it seem weird to you guys, or this is a huge question, hard to answer, but what's your take on this nonsense?
You want to go first? I mean, go first. My answer will be long, and the answer of a old professional social scientist. So you go first, Dalton.
So just like, what do we think of the effect of modern technology?
Yeah, do you feel like it feels like there was a tipping point where the acceleration of the electronics influence in our life and the social media and just like this general buzz and short news cycle, and it just seems like things are just way out of hand and the economy can't stabilize, and to me it's around the 2008 to 2010 range. It seems like since then it's been just life is chaos, and I can't tell if it's just me, it's my own bias, it's my own shortcomings, or if something has actually fundamentally changed.
I think definitely our access to every possible news story has shaped the way we view the world. I mean, I remember being a young kid and not even just a real young kid, even not too long ago, but just my dad's always saying, the world's getting worse, the world's getting worse, when Nick will definitely attest to this, but it's not.
Right.
It's actually getting better.
Yeah.
I think
do you remember before the internet?
I'm 50.
Are you too young?
Oh, Dalton?
Dalton.
I mean, I remember when the internet, it definitely wasn't what it is today. I mean, I was born in 94, and we had a computer when I was like 13 or something like that, but I didn't know how to really use it, and as far as
Oh, Dalton.
yeah, I mean, I know how to Google and YouTube, I don't know the inner workings, but
okay.
I feel like it's a huge distraction in people's lives. And I've noticed it even in myself. I'm addicted to it. It's a huge distraction, and it kind of pulls away our focus on quote unquote real life.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, I mean, everybody's talked about it, how everywhere you go, everybody's just looking at their phones. And that's like a drastic change to what it was, just even like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Where you had to talk to people. You had to be social,
Mm-hmm.
Just standing there, sitting there would be super boring, so you would just talk. But now we have this distraction device where you can seem busy, or just if you're alone or maybe in a social setting, and instead of kind of being pushed into a conversation, if you're on your phone, maybe people bother you or come up and talk to you. Now it's it's definitely weird. It's a little bit different for me because I feel like the time I was born, it's a little difficult for me to remember what life was like without it, because I was a kid when it wasn't really around. You know,
and that's why I asked that, because I do remember before the internet. I was born in 1984, and cell phones were really kind of coming out when I was in high school, like flip phones and pagers, and then Facebook came out when I was in college. So I was like right on the money when this was brand new. And so that's why I have a hard time separating, you know, is this just me? Is this just part of growing up? You know, are everyone's 20s absolute chaos? And to the point of about the world getting better, I think there's all that data to show, okay, crime rates are going down. Objectively, the world is getting better in many, many ways. And I guess this question is more kind of ignoring that piece and more just trying to figure out this sort of looming sense of just weirdness. And are we going to come out the other side and figure out how to manage these phones in our lives and sort of get back to a place of normalcy? Anyways, Nick, I guess it's your turn.
Sure. I mean, so my inclination is to put this in historical perspective, and it was the ancient Greeks who first noticed that the old people, their inclination was always to talk about how fucked up the kids are nowadays.
Yeah.
With their YouTubing and their Snapchatting, and so that's sort of almost part of human nature. Second is to talk about the invention of the horse-towed snowplow around the year 1900. Now, why would I talk about that? Because that allowed mail to be delivered all year round to people who lived in rural areas. That meant that they could get the Sears catalog. The Sears catalog meant that they could order anything they wanted, send away for it, and then a package would come a few months later. Or a few weeks, whatever, right? So, it's the internet shopping, just a greatly speeded up version of that. Now, that's obviously not, that's actually, minimizing and leaving a whole lot. But it's just to put in some perspective that, some of the things we think are new aren't really new. Do I think the internet is consequential overall? Yes. I think it's a big, development in our lives. But, 15 years ago, I didn't talk to people. I carried a book with me.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are a lot of studies that show, increasing mental problems among young people, among teenagers.
Suicide rates are insane.
Is it their tech, though? Who knows, right? I'm not, I'm always cautious about questions of causality, about whether X is causing Y. I personally love having a pocket computer with me everywhere. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I love constant access to information. But the economy is a whole different question, right? That was the biggest financial upheaval since since the Great Depression in the 1930s. Certainly there are more choices for young people nowadays. In 1960, the average young person, got out of high school. If he was a guy, he did a couple of years of military service. Then they got a job, and then they got married soon after. Now, there's more options. Many more people go to college. There's, fewer people are in the labor force. There's certainly more choices now, which is, has a lot of positives and some negatives.
Yeah, I mean, there's too many choices can be a problem. Yeah. And the other thing that's economic-wise that's been really interesting to me is the whole notion of the free economy. There was Sam Harris had a podcast with, I forget the guy's name. He was an expert on computers and free sort of like with Napster, we're still sort of recovering from that change and the expectation that everything is supposed to be free. And the whole podcast was about exploring this and what are all the cascading costs from this. I'm sure if you're listening and you want to just Google like Sam Harris podcast free economy, something like that. It's pretty recent. pretty recent. And
very standard line in business school. It goes like this. If a product is free, you are the product.
correct.
Like
Yeah.
Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Free,
Yeah. They talk. They get into much more detail, and so I'm a journalist, and my industry's gotten devastated. And compared to 6 or 7 or 8 years ago,
Yeah.
there's so many fewer publications. There's fewer people working in it. You just can't make a living wage as a journalist in any niche thing. I mean, there's a high turnover. Guys are leaving. Basically, if you want to survive, you have to have a spouse that makes money and has health insurance. Because I've got a million side gigs and things going just to try to keep it together, but it's tough. It's weird.
It is. I mean, there's a couple of parts of the journalistic ecosystem that have prospered. Like, this is a great time for the several big national newspapers, like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal. But yeah, it's also people don't know as much about their hometowns because there are far fewer smaller papers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And it's all the clickbait headlines. Everyone's desperate for ads because no one's selling enough ads, and they're cutting their staff. And at least for me, I've just noticed that the way I'm having to sort of evolve my writing too. It just rewards for kind of crappy work, where it's the more time freelance journalists are paid per article.
Right.
So any extra time I spend on this is just eating into my profitability. And so it's how fast can I get this done? And I want there's less analysis, and all the comments are like, I had this person comment on, I had to modify an article because I gendered a bicycle, because there used to be men's and women's bicycles, and now they're gender neutral, but I named it because women's bicycles have the top tube is dropped down so they can wear a skirt and not flash everybody. So there's an actual function to it. And I guess, you could say, well, men can wear skirts too, which I'm like, fine. But the point is, it's just a way to practically to talk about this, and everyone understands what it is. And now I had to call it a dropped top tube step-through frame. No one knows. It's so much more complicated. Exactly. No one knows what the fuck. It's the women's bike. Just get over it.
Yeah.
And I had to do this, and so the way I'm writing is becoming much more dry, and it's just information only. I'm not able to explain things because people get offended, or it's just like it just takes too much time. Right. So it's less satisfying as a writer when part of what I enjoy is explaining things and translating things into an understandable. It's my job to do the heavy lifting and understand something complicated and explain it in simple terms, but there's just less of that's happening, and it just makes the work less satisfying. But that's my problem, not yours. Anyways,
should we call it there?
I guess I've sufficiently taken this way off the rails into the weeds.
No, it's good.
It's supposed to be off the rails and in the weeds. No, just what you're supposed to do.
Excellent.
Is that character Guilfoyle?
Yes, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Dark hair, scraggly beard, glasses.
The Satanist.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
But just you have a very similar tone of voice, and
you do sound like Guilfoyle.
All right, as long as you don't start calling me that, Nick.
That was awesome. It's a hilarious. Start from episode 1. I mean, just get into it. It's amazing.
All right.
Well, thanks for coming up.
Yeah, and I guess if people want to listen to my fledgling podcast, it's the Minimal Multisport podcast, which is iTunes, all those things, minimalmultisport.com. I'm on Instagram at Minimal Multisport, and it's mostly I've had to slow down my publishing rate because it was just taking way too much time, and I don't make any money, so it's like a once a month thing now. I try to do more if I can, but it's I don't know. I do editing and music, and I bring it on myself, the extra work, but it's fun. So if you want to hear more about that, check it out.
You also have a much more professional looking product than this podcast, such as it is.
But it's all right. It's fun.
All right. Well, thanks, Greg.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Professor and the Idiot. If you like what you heard, go to Apple Podcasts and give us a good rating so that others may find us and we can expand our social media juggernaut. And if you didn't like it, fuck off to the place you came from.